Hello and welcome to episode 169 of the Colby Cast, your place for community and conversation about pop culture and storytelling. And we are coming to you a day early today because of our schedules just lined up so that we are going to record a day before we normally do. And the episode will be out there for you all to enjoy a day before normal. So, part of the reason why we're doing this is because Caleb is not able to join us because he's got stuff going on. But Luke is here with me to talk about the Acolyte, the season finale, as well as House of the Dragon, the most recent episode named Regent. So, hello, Luke. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Super duper. So, we literally just finished watching The Acolyte, like just like a few minutes ago, and here we are ready to record. Are you ready to do this?
Oh yeah, let's get it over.
So let's talk about The Acolyte first because we have been tag teaming these episodes here for a couple of weeks and we've been alternating Acolyte, House of the Dragon, Acolyte, House of the Dragon. It's Acolyte to go first, which I think is appropriate because, like I said, we just literally finished watching it. So this is going to be almost like an instant reaction type of episode, which we normally don't do. So hit me with it. What were your instant reactions of the season finale of The Acolyte, which is actually called The Acolyte, which we just found out?
Um, I thought it was slightly better than the rest of the show, and that's not to say that it was good either. I thought it was just okay. I think there were two or three moments that sort of made it worthwhile, and I think the rest of it was sort of just like the rest of it lackluster.
So tell me a few of those moments, like what worked for you. Um, let's do that. Let's talk about a couple things that worked for us, and then we'll talk about a few things that didn't work for us. Because I thought it was a good episode, better than we had seen the last couple weeks. Just because I think that it had, I think the show started strong and then sort of like didn't keep that momentum up, in my opinion. And I have a lot of thoughts about the show in general, but we'll get to those. But I do think that this was a strong finish to the season. I don't know if we're getting a season two or if the story is going to continue, but I think that this was, if it seems like they're setting it up for more, obviously. So I think that this was a strong finish to season one. So, what were some of the things that worked for you in this episode?
I thought the action, as usual, was very good. Um, I have no criticisms there throughout this episode or the entire show. I thought the fight scenes were great. Um, I liked the sneak peek of what I believe to be Darth Plagueis. Um, that was really cool. And yeah, that's it.
um, okay, let me talk about, of course, the action. I agree with you. The fight between, should we just call him Kamir or are we calling him the Stranger? Have we decided?
No, let's call him Kamir.
Kamir. Yeah, I'm down with that too. The fight between Kamir and Soul was uh, next level. Like, I mean, that's been the consistent thing that I think the show has really hit home runs with. Not even close. Like the action, the fight choreography. You know, you can just go back and maybe that's what I was missing over the last couple of episodes because it just we didn't get a ton of like action, but the action has been the highlight of the show for me, and this episode delivered on that as well. Just a really compelling fight between those two characters, and the Darth Plagueis reveal. I have a question for you because I guess my mind was working against me. Like I didn't. I assumed that was Plagueis, but then I started to tell myself. I think I started talking myself out of it, trying to remember. Like, have we seen any type of image of Plagueis before? And I remembered something in the Clone Wars. I think it was during that season 6 that we may have caught a glimpse of Plagueis. I can't really remember, but I have no doubt that it's Plagueis. I agree with you. I do too. But my question for you, if we're gonna go with that assumption, is this: what does that mean? Like for the overall, we know that. I mean, I guess we know that Plagueis was Palpatine's master, right? Because he's the one talking about Darth Plagueis the Wise. I'm assuming that's official. Um, so what is? Do you think that Kamir knows he's there, and he's like actively partaking in his tutelage and is training with him, or do you think that Plagueis is sort of lurking and is a like no pun intended, a phantom menace type of presence on that island?
First of all, I do not believe you when you say no pun intended. That is,
You know me so well.
um, yeah, but Caleb's not here to encourage it. Um, no, I think he's involved. I mean, I have a hard time believing that he would just be hanging out watching this while it's happening, especially considering how Kamir is very seems to be very trained in the ways of the Force, particularly the dark side. Um, I know that he spoilers for later on in the episode, but it's revealed that he was a Padawan, but I don't think he would know how to do what he can do now had it not been for the training of what is believed to be Plagueis. And I think that it sort of ties into Palpatine created Anakin by manipulating the Metachlorians, and Plagueis is the one who trained Palpatine. So maybe he learned something through working with OSHA now that will pay off a couple hundred years or 100 years down the road when we see Anakin. But I don't know. That's just my gut reaction.
Do you think we're going to get a season 2 of this show? Like, whether you hope for it or not, do you think
Yeah,
we're going to?
I think we will, and I hope we don't. It sounds bad to say, but I've lost interest. There's nothing. I don't want to see more of these characters. I don't want to see. I want to see more Plagueis. That's it. I don't want to see more of these characters. The plot doesn't interest me enough to go in deeper. Soul was the only Jedi that I thought was interesting at all, and he's gone now. So, but I think that they left it open enough where they have to revisit it. I don't think there was any sort of conclusion that you could say like, yeah, we're just going to leave it at that.
Yeah, I agree with you, especially after dropping the Plagueis cameo in there. I'm not sure we get any Plagueis anywhere else except this show now, because he's clearly on that island, on that planet, involved with Kamir in one way, shape, or form, whether he's sort of lurking in the shadows or actively working with Kamir. I don't know. I just he did Kamir. I can't remember over the course of the season. Did Kamir ever say anything about a master? He talked about the master, but I always assumed that he was talking about himself when he was still trying to hide his identity. So I guess maybe him referring to the master could be him referring to Plagueis. I don't know, but either way, we know that Plagueis and Palpatine end up together, training, a master and apprentice. So that would mean that Kamir is not going to be around, whether he dies or is killed or runs off to become his own thing remains to be seen. You brought up Soul, and I want to talk about Soul, but I want to talk about Kamir first, since we're talking about all these dark siders. You weren't high on him as the villain earlier on. Did he grow on you at all? Did he end up becoming more interesting to you? Because I found him to be a pretty cool character. I like the actor, and I like the character, and I understand what he's trying to do a lot better now. And I ended up enjoying him as a character, and I know that you didn't always. But what about now?
He definitely grew on me. Um, I think the longer and further away we were from his goofy, weird alter ego, the more I was able to see him as a respectable villain because he is. He's powerful in the Force and with his fighting ability and all that. Um, he grew on me. I don't like the weird like holding hands at the end of the episode and like
Yeah, what was that about?
the thing when he was, in the water without clothes, getting out and that whole thing.
Agreed. Yeah.
I I don't know if they're trying to go for like some creepy, weird, evil thing going on with him or what, but I didn't really like that. Um I also don't like the fact that it took a whole season for us to get here. And we still don't really know what his intentions are. I know they ask him at one point, like, what do you want? And he's like, something along the lines of to be able to exist and live how I want to live, or something like that, right? Um, that doesn't mean anything. There's no substance to that. And that's why I'm still like, I like him more now, but that's not to say that I like him as a character.
So thinking back like all the way to the first episode, the first time we saw him was at the end of that episode 1 where he was standing on that rock and he was sort of doing that whole monologue thing for May. And one of the things he says is I can't I don't have it in front of me, but to paraphrase, like he wants to destroy the Jedi, and he mentions destroying the Jedi with an idea and with an acolyte. So I, and then at another point, like you said, he did bring up the fact that he wants to live basically the way he wants to live and not be told how to live by anybody, which would make sense if he were a former Jedi Padawan. He has rebelled against that completely. But then he also mentions at one point that he wants the power of two. He wants an acolyte. So I guess the end game for him was that he wanted an apprentice. He wanted, which he is calling an acolyte. Um, and the end game for that, I guess, is to bring down the Jedi. And if we're taking him for his word, at his word, then that means this acolyte is going to deliver on an idea that destroys the Jedi. Which I guess if we fast forward 100 years down the road, I guess it's all rooted in that because the distrust of the Jedi that is manufactured by Palpatine, and then of course, their destruction through the Order 66 is a whole other thing. But I suppose that this could be the seed that is planted that will blossom into that or grow into that. I don't know. Time will tell, and I think that's a big reach, but his motivation definitely is to bring down the Jedi. You think I'm reading that right? Are you getting that?
Yeah, I agree with you, but I do think that that's isn't that like sort of the point of the Sith? Like, is that specific to him,
Good
or
point. Yeah.
is he just because he? I mean, he hasn't even been said to be a Sith necessarily, right? But it's sort of implied. But just the fact that he is a dark side user, isn't that the point? I don't know if there's any. I'm sure there's a personal vendetta that he has now that we know that he was a former Padawan and whatever. They can go into that, but I don't know how personal any of his intentions are, other than the same intention every Sith has of destroying the Jedi.
Yeah, that's true. And I guess maybe I'm struggling a little bit with that because I was sort of hoping that he isn't Sith. I didn't necessarily care. You know me, I ride the roller coaster. So I'm not going to sit there and say, "Oh, you ruined this and you ruined that by doing this." No, I don't care. If you want to tell me a story, I'm here to hear the story. But I was sort of hoping that they were sort of making a big deal out of this show being the first real property that exists outside of the Skywalker saga time frame or the era of the Skywalkers. But if you're going to tie in Plagueis and you're going to tie in the Sith, then you're really just leading to the Skywalker stories, right?
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I
I
was
was
hoping that we wouldn't see Yoda. I mean, I was okay with seeing Yoda, but I was hoping that we would just be completely separated and that it would be strong enough to stand on its own. And I don't think it was, and I think that's part of why they might have tied it into the other stuff.
Yeah, the two things, and I do want to comment on that quick stinger scene with Yoda. But let me say this first. I was sort of hoping for, not expecting, don't get me wrong, but I thought it would have been really cool if they had tied this more into like a Knights of Ren or a different sect of dark side users rather than the Sith and the traditional Jedi versus Sith stuff. But I'm cool if they want to do it with Plagueis. I do want to comment real quickly on that Yoda scene. I'm not sure how I feel about that. I don't think it's necessary. What's the point of that scene? Do you have any opinions? I don't see the point of that scene.
I feel like that scene is almost counterproductive. Um,
I sort of feel the same way. Yeah. Why do you think that?
I think the whole point was they were going to keep all this under wraps. They weren't going to let the council know. They were going to make sure that Soul took the blame for all of it, which I didn't like that either. But I feel like telling Yoda means that she's going to. What was her name? Master Venestra?
Yeah.
I think Venestra would be coming clean to Yoda. And if they're going to try to say that Yoda was going to be complacent in all of that, I don't know. I take issue with that because Yoda, in my opinion, did not have any faults other than being too true to what he believed in. But I mean, even look at what he allowed Anakin and Obi-Wan to do. I don't think that he is part of the issue of the Jedi that they're trying to convey.
I do know, and yeah, that is reflective of a lot of what I have to say. We got a scene with Vernestra telling basically the Senate what she wanted to say, which was a whole bunch of hogwash, a whole bunch of lies. Right? She basically blamed Soul for everything. I get it. That's fine. You're covering up the truth. You're continuing to do what had happened from the beginning, which was not tell the entire truth and nothing but the truth. So help you the Force. I get it. So we established that that's going to be the party line going forward about this type of situation. I don't understand why we need a scene with her walking in to tell Yoda the same thing. So she's either going to tell him the same thing, which why do we need to see that if we already saw it? Or she's going there to tell him something else, which could be more close to the truth or maybe even more lies. I don't know. But if it's implied, and I sort of got the feeling, what did she say when she walked in there? She literally said, like, we need to talk or I need to talk to you or something. Do you remember?
Something along the lines of I need to tell you something or I need to talk to you. Something like that.
I just remember thinking in the moment while I watched that, and again, only seen it once, but it was just a few minutes ago. Don't try to make me think that Yoda was accountable to this.
I completely agree because I think back to the conversation that Anakin had with Yoda where he was having his visions and his nightmares. And if what they took from that conversation was that Yoda was doing something wrong and that what he said to Anakin pushed him further down the path of the dark side, I completely disagree with that. And I really hope that that's not what they're trying to build towards because every Jedi has their faults just because the Jedi Order is flawed, right? Um,
Sure.
but Yoda is the closest thing to flawless that we have seen in a Jedi, and it would it would send me down a path of anger and hate and suffering if they tried to drag Yoda down with all these other nameless Jedi.
So I'm just thinking about like the legacy of Yoda, and we first, of course, depending on who you are as a fan, I was first introduced to Yoda in The Empire Strikes Back, um, and he came off as a wise teacher. Don't know a ton about him, but he was portrayed as sort of a victim of the circumstances, and he was hiding out and trying to help overturn and stop the Sith Emperor Empire. Same thing sort of happened in Return of the Jedi. Clearly, we knew that he and Obi-Wan did not tell Luke Skywalker the truth and the whole truth, so help you the Force. But at the same time, he didn't come off as a bad guy in any way or complicit in the bad things that had happened. Now fast forward slash rewind to the prequels. I don't think that he came out squeaky clean at the end of the sequels. He clearly was in a leadership position when the Jedi were destroyed. So, sure, as a leader, you need to take responsibility and ownership over some of that. But I don't, and it sort of goes back to something you said in your initial thoughts. I don't feel like he was an active problem and hurting the Jedi in the areas that ended up leading to their destruction. I don't feel like he was withholding truths. I don't feel like he was doing bad things, for lack of a better, more of uh, like a better way of saying that. I think he was doing his best and had noble intentions. Now, did he know about this kind of thing that happened in the Phantom Menace? I don't know. A really interesting thought was brought up by a friend of the show, Frank Mulder, where he wanted to go back and watch the Phantom Menace because when Qui-Gon is talking about how they had found a vergence in the Force, Mace Windu looks over at Yoda and then looks back at Qui-Gon and said, "Centered around a person." Like he understood the importance of a vergence, and it was almost like it caught him off guard that it was centered around a person rather than like a planet or an area or something like that. So I don't know if maybe they saw that scene and said, okay, let's play off of that a little bit. And Yoda does know some stuff. I just don't know that that scene is needed, and I'm looking forward to hearing some other opinions. So maybe other people saw things that we didn't, but here we are talking about it, and we sort of reacted the same way. So, one thing that I'm interested to hear about your reaction is Master Soul. And then I want to talk about the twins, and then we'll see where else we go. But those are the last two things on my check mark. Um, so I wasn't happy with what happened to Soul. I think his character stayed consistent from the beginning to end. Now you can agree with the way he went about things or not, but I do feel like in his heart he did want to do the right thing for the twins. And at the first opportunity that Osha had to hear him confess and give some reasons why he did what he did, she did him dirty, man. She just force chokes the guy and he's dead. Like next thing you know, he's dead. And he just now should he have killed Mother Anastasia? No, but he felt like he did the right thing, and I feel like he had good reasons to explain why he wanted to protect the twins. But that didn't matter, and now he dies because of that action. So I think that sort of gets more at some issues that I have with the show in general, which I'm going to save for down the road in a couple minutes. But what was your reaction to that whole thing and how things developed with Soul?
I didn't like it. I I think if what they were going for was being frustrated at the Jedi, then that's they got what they wanted, right? Because now to me, I'm not mad at um we shouldn't have gone with his name, the stranger. What's his name?
Kamir.
Kamir. I'm not mad at Kamir. I'm mad at Vanestra because like the she chose not to hold herself accountable and put Soul like tarnish his name and his reputation. And I just I don't know what they were going for. If that's what they were going for, then they got what they wanted. But is that really like the one of the only characters who, as usual, I feel comfortable speaking on behalf of everybody else. Um, I felt he was one of the only characters that I really cared about, or that was even worth like revisiting down the line. And not only do you kill him off, but you also just completely ruin his reputation. I feel like he deserved better. And it's not like a "Oh, I can't wait to see what the bad guys do next" kind of thing. To me, it's just like, okay, I'm over it now.
Yeah, I don't. They did him dirty, and they made him out to be not just incapable, but poorly motivated and villainous in the eyes of the Senate. She straight up said it. He was a wayward individual, and the bad decisions of a wayward individual, or lost man, or something like that. Vernestra's just out there sewering soul. So yeah, that's a problem. I don't know if there's a lot. I know, actually, I do know there's quite a few Vernestra Rowe fans out there because of the High Republic books and comics. So I'm wondering, I'm really interested to see how people feel about how the show, what the direction that they took her, because I wasn't sure if she was going to be complicit or like actually straight up evil and maybe had tied in to Khmer as his master right now, like sort of in hiding. Clearly, we find out that she was his master from before, but that they had separated, that he had left, turned to evil, she said. I guess maybe a case could be made that if there is a season two, maybe has turned to the dark side and is more of an active villain in this story. As of right now, it just seems like she is um, just trying to cover up what happened, and she saw an opportunity to make Soul a scapegoat and did it. I wasn't happy with that, and I think that sort of speaks, like I sort of referenced, to a larger issue I have with the show. But I want to hear. I have one thing to say really about the twins, and that's that their motivations and their mood changes in this episode gave me whiplash, because like literally 5 minutes before they're hugging and saying a tearful goodbye, they're fighting each other in the room. And then I can't, and I understand, like, yeah, I get I get Osha's motivation because she learned the truth about Soul. She chose violence rather than forgiveness. I get it. She bled the Kyber crystal, turned that blue crystal into red, which I thought was cool because that's like how it happens. We've just never really seen that happen on screen, and I thought that was a pretty interesting depiction of it. So I understand that she just chose not to uh, she chose to succumb to the dark side. She chose to succumb to her anger. I don't understand May's motivations in this whatsoever, because everything's turned 180 degrees for both characters, and I didn't understand. I mean, May has never displayed any magnanimous feelings towards her sister. It was always selfish, 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 and I don't know. She didn't learn anything in this episode or in the previous episode that she didn't already know. She knew that Soul killed her mother. She saw it happen. She didn't learn anything, not that I caught. So I don't understand why she all of a sudden became. Um, anyway, I think it's sort of like goes forward with the uneven motivations of some of the characters in the show. But that's neither here nor there. What are your thoughts on the twins?
Yeah, I agree. I It really felt like they would just switch spots, and I hate that because it didn't feel like there was any sort of progress. I think that they might have been going for like May is, she grew up and she's going to give Osha what she wants. And she didn't want her to go with the Jedi now, but now she's going to let her do what she wants. And she sacrificed her memory and all that so that Osha could go do what she wants. Really? Her sacrifice is letting her sister join the dark side? That she was
Exactly.
willing to abandon herself? But no, I'm just, I'm going to let you do what you want because I didn't let you do what you wanted before. Even if what you're going to do is terrible. I just, it didn't feel like there was any progress with them as characters. If anything, they just completely switched because Osha was oblivious, kind of useless at the beginning of the show. And May was dangerous and she was so hurt and angry at the world and all that. Now it's just flipped, and I refuse to believe that that was on accident. That had to be a choice that they made to go in that direction, and I think that that's a huge mistake.
Yeah, and it wasn't. I don't think it was very well executed. Um, so I've been teasing it here a couple different times, but let's just get to. I want to share some of my overall thoughts on the series now that it's the season, now that it's done, because I do assume that we're going to get more of this. I almost sort of hope we do, just because I want to see where it goes and what they do with the if they learn from this season and move forward. I love Star Wars, and the more Star Wars we get, the happier I am. So by all means, bring me more. And the direction that it's going now, I do want to see more of this. So in that sense, and in a lot of areas, I do think that it was good. I enjoyed the action. I enjoyed some of the characters. This show contains one of my favorite Star Wars quotes now of all time, which is when Jecki told Osha, "We're not defined by what we lose, but what we survive." I love that quote so much. I really think that it's powerful. So there's definitely things that I liked about the show. Overall, though, and I sort of know where you fall on this, but please feel free to add to anything that you would like while I'm here rambling about my feelings on the show. As you know, and I have to start this little rant with the fact that I watched for the first time ever in my life Saving Private Ryan. How does this have anything to do with the Acolyte? Saving Private Ryan was a brilliant movie. It shook me to my core, Luke. I'm telling you. I when I finished watching that, I felt like I needed a palate cleanser. It was so realistic and it was so brutal,
and heavy.
so heavy, and the ending of that movie is so emotional. And I'm not going to spoil anything Saving Private Ryan, so don't worry. But all I know is that it really shook me, and I was sitting there and I thought to myself, what do I want to do now? What am I going to put through my eyeballs in my brain? And I'm like, I don't even want to scroll through like Instagram reels right now and come across something super emotional, because I was very emotional after watching that movie. Um, so you know what my palate cleanser was? You know what my happy place was? I watched Star Wars. I watched the original 1977 Star Wars: A New Hope. I needed some lightsabers in my life after watching Saving Private Ryan, and it worked like a charm. And I have to tell you, I sat there and I just really thoroughly enjoyed watching A New Hope for like the 500th time in my life. Han Solo made me laugh. Princess Leia made me laugh. Luke Skywalker being whiny made me laugh. So much of that movie was so enjoyable and really helped put my mind in a happier place. And I think that that is what that movie did collectively and has been doing since 1977. Because the movie and the whole foundation that it built for Star Wars is based on hope. It's based on good overcoming evil. It's based on the little defenseless people overcoming the war machine and this uber powerful empire. Um, Couple episodes ago on Coffee with Kenobi, I was listening to Dan talk to James Burns from Jedi News, a wonderful website, and they brought up something that sort of resonated with something that I was thinking at the same time, which was that back in the 70s, it was a dark time in the world. There were dark movies, there wasn't a ton of hope. Vietnam War was going on, there's political turmoil in the country, and here comes this plucky little science fantasy film with space wizards and spaceships and fantastic movie and music and a clearly defined good guy and a clearly defined bad guy. And the world ate it up because I think as a society, people were sick and tired of being living in the gray area. Why am I saying all of this? Because I feel like the Acolyte is sort of the inverse of that. We're seeing the rise of evil in this show. All of our heroes died. One hero that's left is lying left and right. The morality of the show is geared more towards the dark side. And I just don't like that. I like Now, I don't need that in everything. Now, let me be clear. I don't need that in everything. But if it's Star Wars, I just wonder if that is in the DNA of the franchise. Because if you think about everything, we have clearly defined, understandable good guys and bad guys through most of everything. Now, there might be some moral gray areas in some characters here and there. Clearly, Anakin Skywalker has issues, right? But if you think about it, we always have our good guys and we have our bad guys. This show is about the bad guys and how they won. And I don't know. I just think maybe that wasn't what I was. I'm hope. I got to be honest with you, Luke. From right as soon as we saw Kamir and Osha standing on the rocks by the ocean, and he sort of grabbed her hand, and it showed their faces, and I sort of focused in on Osha's face. I immediately thought, I hope season 2 is about her redemption because I don't mind her falling to the dark side. Anakin Skywalker did that, and then he was redeemed. I'm hoping that the further storytelling of these characters is showing how Osha can be redeemed. But we don't have that right now. And I think that's probably what I have as far as the biggest issue with the show. Did it ruin my life? No. Did it ruin Star Wars for me? No. I'm going to watch more. But I do think that there was a dearth of hope. There wasn't enough of that kind of stuff for me. So, that's just sort of where I stand on it. So, thank you for listening to my rant.
So I can agree with what you're saying. Um, I think if you watch Revenge of the Sith or even Andor or not every Star Wars project is all fun and lighthearted.
By no
Sometimes
means. No, absolutely.
sometimes the bad guys win and the good guys lose. Look at the Last Jedi, right? But there's always something that comes from it that is beneficial. And I hate to just keep beating on the same dead horse, but it's got to be good, right? Nobody took issue with the Revenge of the Sith because it was good. Yes, the bad guys won, and we watched a bunch of younglings get slaughtered, and basically every character you ever knew either died or turned evil. But it was a tremendous movie from a storytelling perspective. It was incredible visually. I mean, it had you on the edge of your seat the entire time. The show did not do any of that, with the exception of the action being pretty good. I'd say it was very good. Nothing about it was even worth watching. I feel like this is just a Star Wars show that people watched because it was Star Wars, not because it was interesting or because, it was going to tie into something down the line that people were interested in or that it was new. I think people just watched it because it was Star Wars. And it didn't feel, like you said, didn't feel like Star Wars. And it doesn't always have to, because The Mandalorian really feels like Star Wars. But Andor does not. And Andor, widely regarded as one of, if not the best seasons of any Star Wars television.
Sure.
So, yeah, I agree with you because you have to give a little bit of good if you're going to give a lot of bad. And they didn't give very much good. They just sort of ended on the lowest of low notes and said, yeah, we'll announce a new season in a couple days, maybe a week, probably.
I don't really like when any type of evil is glorified, and I feel like a lot of this show was the glorification of evil, and that just
I don't
doesn't.
I don't care what the actors said. I don't even care what the director or producers say. But they were talking about, oh, if I was a force user, I would be on the dark side. And
Oh,
the
I
dark
saw that. Yeah,
cool and I like the dark side and that and that and that. And like, yeah, okay, cool. I like Darth Maul too, and Darth Vader is awesome. But they are not what Star Wars is about.
yeah. So either I'm jumping the gun and judging this as an unfinished product because maybe there's more stories to tell, that's the hope that I have that lives in me, that a property like this will go down that way because I feel like that's the worthwhile storytelling. like you brought up Revenge of the Sith, and I don't want to beat the dead horse too long, but I'll continue beating it for a little bit. You brought up Revenge of the Sith. The bad guys won, the good guys lost, but it still ends with Obi-Wan Kenobi delivering Luke Skywalker to Beru and Lars, Uncle Owen, sorry, and Aunt Beru, and they're standing on that dune, looking out at the two twin suns, and you hear the swell of the Star Wars music, John Williams, and you know what that means, that there's still hope. I don't see where, and I feel like I think if you ask 10 people what what they love about Star Wars, 9 of them are going to say hope. It's the message of hope. And like we sort of live in a world again that is dark and it's difficult. Like don't watch the news right now. Like be informed, but don't get sucked into the nightly news because you're going to think like the world is going to end. You know what I mean? And I don't know that we need a story where the villains win and there's no hope. I don't see any hope. All I know is that the bad guys are all dead. I'm sorry, the good guys are all dead. The bad guys are in positions of power, and any Jedi that we have focused on are spreading lies. And I don't know. I'm not saying this is not my Star Wars because I love Star Wars. I don't care what kind of Star Wars, but this is, that I think that's where maybe what I've had the most struggle with, about a halfway point of the season. I'm a Jedi guy. I love my favorite characters are Jedi. Luke, Ahsoka, Kenobi. Right. This is the one that I won't settle on. They're all Jedi, and I know Ahsoka walked away from but she still lives the Jedi way. She's gonna help people, and I don't see these characters in the show helping people. So we'll see where it goes in the future if it does. But yeah, so that's the final word I have for the Acolyte.
Yeah, I didn't even think about, you know, helping people because this show was so self-contained. You didn't see anybody, you didn't see the Jedi doing any Jedi work. You didn't see Jedi helping people fighting bad guys. You only saw them dying to bad guys.
The
And
one character that truly believed that he was doing good gets brutally murdered in
and
cold blood.
then blamed for everything bad that happened.
And then, but yeah, that's I don't know.
And
Maybe it's just a little too realistic for me.
and that's fine. You know, if you want to go down that route, there are plenty of stories that are told in different lines that are dark and sad, and the bad guys win and the good guys lose. But it's got to be good. And I mean, I'm probably more critical of this show than I need to be, but I don't think anybody can say with a straight face that there was enough going on in this show that was good enough to counteract the bad stuff.
Yeah.
Clearly, I'm very articulate right now.
Yeah, we both are. Our both of our brains are scrambled eggs right now, I think. Uh yeah. Well, and trust me, I don't want anybody that has listened to this podcast over the 2 years that we've been doing this has heard me say this a million times already. I love Star Wars. I'm an 8-year-old kid again when I watch Star Wars. When it comes on my screen, I just get giddy. I just love it. And I'm not a critic, so I don't. I'm a fan first. I don't try to be overly critical or even try to think. I enjoy the experience. This one though, and so don't think that I take any joy in saying the things that I'm saying right now because it did fall flat. But at the same time, it is just one season in a very large galaxy of stories, and I did enjoy seeing what it added to the Star Wars tapestry. We do have some context now and some pre-stories from the original. Sorry, the prequel trilogy. So it's not all bad news, but I just think maybe the like last week I think I talked about the thesis of the show, like the so what. I think that's where I was like, yeah, this isn't necessarily the type of Star Wars story that I think needs to be told right now. So anyway, hey, I got a question for you, Luke. A serious question. We talked about this show for 45 minutes. I didn't expect to go this long. Do we want to tackle episode 5 of House of the Dragon, or do we want to save that up for next week?
Let's do it because I feel like there's not a ton to talk about in House of the Dragon.
That's fair. That's fair. Okay, so let's keep the momentum going then. So we're gonna stop talking about the Acolyte at this point. We're gonna tackle House of the Dragon season 2, episode 5, which was entitled Regent. So if you have not watched that, go check it out. Where I want to start with this is if Damon doesn't run with his hair on fire out of Harrenhal after having the dream he had in this episode, he deserves whatever bad stuff is coming to him. That's all I can say.
Oh yeah, I am. Damon has been. There was an interview. I've been seeing a lot of interviews going on with the actors of House of the Dragon, and one of the interviews with Damon's actor was talking about how everybody loves his character, and he was like, "My character's terrible. He's been terrible since season one. He's like as bad as any of the rest of the bad guys." And they were like, "Yeah, but we still love you, Damon. It's running out. I love you, and I will defend you, but not for much longer, because
Nope.
because Jace, he is doing what you were supposed to do. Rhaenyra is she put her team on her back and she is going the distance. And everybody else is carrying their load. And he's over there being Bob the Builder."
I heard somebody. There's this TikTok account that I follow. It's called All the Recaps, but there's like six S's at the end of recaps, and this guy is hilarious. He just sort of does like like a spoof recap of different scenes and episodes, and he said that Harrenhal turned Damon into a property brother.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
over there Tony Starking his firewood, like he's just chopping his firewood. And can I please, I agree with you about Jace, because Jace came through like in this episode. That scene with him in the was it the twins? Not the
Yeah.
twin people, but they call that area the twins, right?
Yeah. In the Riverlands. Yeah.
He's sitting there at that table in the middle of a bridge, and he's just like, look, this is what we want. And they're just like, well, they have Vagar. And he's like, I have my dragon right here. And they're just like, yeah, but they have Vagar. But it didn't phase him one bit. He's just like, okay, well, tell me what you guys want. And this is what we want. Tell me what you want. They're like Harrenhal. And he's like, well, if you want Harrenhal, then you need to bend your knees because we can make it happen, but we need a little bit more than just passage, right? He was a stud. Like, he took care of business.
I firmly believe that he always had it in him. All he needed was a trip up to the Starks to get his confidence up and a haircut. All it took.
I was happy to see that he had a sort of a turn. I'm not done with Damon, but I will say this about Jace. The last couple of episodes, I was a little bit nervous about him because noticeably he's darker. He's been darker. Like even his clothes have been darker.
He
He's
looked
been
very Jon Snow-esque.
he seemed like he was much more edgy than he had been. He's
Broody.
mouthing off to mom, and I wasn't like it when he was mouthing off to mom. But this episode really sort of turned him. You know, he wants to be useful, right? And so does Rhaenyra. So he goes off on this trip and he comes through. But here's my final thought about Damon. This guy needs to start giving more specific orders. I'm sorry, but he just sort of looks at these people and says, "Here, just go do the thing." And they end up doing these terrible things and he's just like, "I never told you to do that." Come on, man. Come on.
Don't you think that that is intentional?
I don't know cuz he doesn't act
I do
like if it
think
were intentional, he wouldn't care what the outcomes are, and he's clearly not happy with the outcomes.
I think he's unhappy with the outcomes, not because it's not what he wanted, but because he knows that other people aren't going to like it. Like, I don't think he was upset that they can't believe we the show keeps coming back to the decapitated baby, and I don't like it. But
Yeah, can they stop that, please? Oh,
but I don't think he was upset about that. He was upset that it happened the way it happened because Rhaenyra got mad at him.
I agree with you.
And he isn't upset that women and children were being murdered in the Riverlands. He was upset that that was going to cause him more headaches.
Yeah, yeah. I think he even he seemed to really even like, what was it, the Blackwoods that he was trying to get on their side, and he was using the Brackens, or was it the other way around?
Something like that.
Whatever. So whatever the when he was sitting on his dragon, and he's telling these people, like, bend your knee, and they're like, and what? And he's like, we'll burn you, and they're like, okay, burn us. I think he respected that. Like, I think he was like, oh yeah, these are the kind of people I want fighting for me.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that that's a good thing. I think it's really important that that happens. Um, at the same time, I think sending some random dude who was the lord of some mill in the middle of nowhere, no reason with Damon, I don't think that that's going to go the way that they want. But I do
Hmm.
think, let's put it this way, I don't think Damon is ever going to leave the Riverlands again. I don't think we're going to see him.
Oh, interesting.
I don't, because everything seems to be pointing towards a meeting at Harrenhal. They're gathering
Yeah,
an army to put at Harrenhal. The Greens know they have to go to Harrenhal.
yeah,
Rhaenyra is getting sick of being stuck on Dragonstone. I think
yeah.
everybody's going to end up there. I don't see a point of him leaving. And the crazy little witch lady said that you're going to die there.
This is a good point. I'm gonna miss Damon if he ends up dying. I don't know if he dies this season, next season, or whatever, but he's chaos, and I don't agree with a lot of the things he does, but he
He's
definitely is an
necessary
interesting.
chaos.
He is. But you've got the Stark Greybeards. They're marching from the north. You've got the other
Mm,
people that Jace secured, which was from where, the Erie, I think, the
the
Erie
fail.
before
Yeah.
the Vale. Thank you, the Vale. They're mobilizing, so they need to be able to get through the Riverlands, which he seemingly secured passage and more people. So yeah, I think you're right. I think all roads right now are leading to Harrenhal, and that's going to be interesting to see what comes of that. We've got 3 episodes left only this season.
Oh my God. No, no.
Yeah,
I'm not
6,
okay
7,
with
and
it.
8.
This is probably the first show where I have watched it the minute it has dropped, every single episode. I don't think I've ever
Appointment.
done that with a show before.
Yeah, yeah, it's excellent. You know what else is excellent? Bela. She's the MVP of this episode. That scene with her and her grandsire, Corliss,
Corliss. Yeah.
she rocks. Let me tell you. He's like, I would make you my heir. And she's like, I'm sorry, Grandpa. I'm blood and fire. That needs to go to Salt and Sea. And she's like, that's not me. She totally called him out. Now, I understand. Trust me. I'm not giving Corliss a hard time. He just lost his wife. Like, that's tragic. That's terrible.
100%.
But Bela contextualizes that for him. And she straight up tells him she wasn't just taken from you. Like, she mattered to a lot of people. It's not only about you, which he was making it about him. And I'm like, you go, girl. That was amazing. Great scene.
Yeah. She seemed very Targaryen there. I loved it.
Very
Um
much so.
I think she's particularly interesting because now it's sort of just her and um her grandsire, like you said, because
Yep.
they sent her sister away. Her
Hmm.
mother's dead.
Hmm.
Damon is her stepfather.
Yes. No, Damon is her father.
Oh, like biological father. Yeah, but they
You're
were
talking about
always
Bela?
yeah,
Yeah, Bela and Reyna. The Damon is her father with Lena,
yeah,
who's dead.
who's dead. But still, they were never close. He never cared about them.
Sure.
Um, and he's also a Targaryen. She's not. So she and her grandmother Rhaenys is gone. So it sort of just falls on her. I also have seen Game of Thrones enough times to know that they never bring up that bloodline. There is no House Velaryon,
That's true.
so I'm assuming we don't see them for much longer. You know, they name drop a lot of families that we end up seeing down the road, but they're not one of them, and they're getting less and less every season.
Was Driftmark even in Game
Nope,
of Thrones? I can't remember.
I don't remember them ever mentioning Driftmark in Game of Thrones.
I don't. But Dragonstone was right because I think I remember
Yes,
it wasn't Daenerys. Didn't Daenerys
Dragonstone.
go to Dragonstone?
Daenerys comes from Essos to Dragonstone, but also Stannis Baratheon was at Dragonstone.
Oh, right, with that crazy witch lady.
Yes, exactly, the Red Woman.
Yeah, yeah. I remember now. Yeah, that's a very good point because Driftmark is very geographically is very close to Dragonstone. So for it not to have figured it whatsoever in the Game of Thrones 10 seasons or whatever that is of Game of Thrones, it's a very valid point, and that bums me out because Bela is an awesome character, and I like awesome characters, and I like Bela a lot. Um, but what about these potential? We've been talking all about Targaryens and Team Black, so let's finish off our conversation before we talk a little bit about the Greens and finish our conversation. But to finish things off with Team Black, how compelling is that story line that they just set up at the last scene where Jace and Rhaenyra are talking about others of their bloodline that went off and married other noble houses or whatever, and then Rhaenyra sort of looks up at her bookcase and there's just like scroll after scroll after scroll is stacked upon each other talking about where these people are or who they may have married so that they can start recruiting some hopefully some dragon riders because they've got these dragons without riders on Dragonstone, and that's really the only advantage they have right now are is dragon power, but they don't have enough dragon riders. I think that's super interesting. I can't wait to see what comes of that.
That's such a cool concept to me. I mean, dragons, it's funny because a lot of people were drawn to the show just because of the dragons, and we don't even get functioning dragons until what, season 4 or 5 of Game of
Oh,
Thrones.
Game of Thrones, yeah.
And then we see them in a very limited capacity throughout the entire show. Um, and now that we're seeing dragons fight, everybody is either like, yes, more and more, or like, no, I don't want to see any more dead dragons. Please stop. Um, but it's so cool because they keep talking about how this war needs to be won with armies and boots on the ground, and that a war of dragons. Rainey says a line about, there's no war as evil as a war between kin, and no war bloodier than a war between dragons.
Yeah.
Um, Now we're adding a whole lot more gasoline to the fire with more dragons now,
Hmm.
and Rhaenyra seems to finally have gotten the push that she needs to get off her throne in Dragonstone, start doing some stuff to be seen, and to be seen particularly on Dragonback. That is going to be scary.
Well, she's a fierce warrior, and her dragon is fierce too, and like she clearly has experience. Now, one of the lines that she said earlier in the episode, which I thought was amazing, was that one guy, I don't know his name, that keeps on giving her a hard time during her Black Council meetings. Um, she like literally says, "My father's time was a time of peace. You've seen no more battles than I have." I'm like, oh, shut him up. Anyway, but I digress. The two people I thought of immediately, maybe I shouldn't, or maybe they did this on purpose. When it comes to like not full Targaryen, is that one guy that they introduced in the pub? I guess that one guy who claims to be the half brother of Daemon
Yeah,
and Viserys.
yeah,
He's an older dude, but that doesn't mean he can't ride a dragon.
mm,
They introduced him for a reason, right?
yeah.
And then the other guy is Hugh. Hugh has some pretty light hair.
He
This
does.
guy with the sick daughter and he's the what's it like the blacksmith or something like that. He was
Yeah,
introduced in
he's
the
a
first
smith of some
episode.
sort.
Yeah, but I don't know. I don't know. They've introduced those characters for a reason, so I'm interested to see where we go with that. But
I think the
yeah,
tricky thing there is, are the Greens going to say, okay, you're going to do that, then we're going to get some more Dragon Riders too? And then
but do they
who?
even have any free agent dragons? Like all their dragons are claimed, right?
I believe so, but
Yeah.
who's to say they don't end up claiming some dragons or finding some eggs, you know?
Yeah, That's true. I mean, there's only 3 episodes left, so that'll be interesting.
You know
I'm
who
assuming
else?
there's going to be some
Uh,
big. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
you know who else I think is an interesting option?
Hmm.
My boy Alan, because they keep.
Oh, Alan. Oh, good point.
I don't know if he's of Targaryen blood, but he's the bastard of Corlys, and Corlys is Valyrian. And
Yeah, he would be a dragon rider. He could.
I would very much like to see him on a dragon.
Well, and let's be clear here. That is a book thing that could be changed in the show by all means. We don't know for sure, but we do know something is up because Rhaenys called Corlys out on it right before she went off to fight Vagar, which was like, he doesn't deserve to be shoved under, under the, you know, he deserves to be appreciated for the fact that he saved your life. So, um, okay, that's enough on Team Black. Let's go to Team Green here real quick. Kristen Cole continues to be the worst. Just to give everyone an update on whether or not Kristen Cole is the worst, he still is. But I am nervous that they're going to try to do something with this character that I don't want them to do, which was make me like him because he's clearly got some development going on. Like he's got PTSD after that battle. That changed him. That messed with him.
Yeah, he said something along the lines of unnecessarily losing 2,000 men.
Yeah, and he's not so gung ho to go out and do these things, especially after his great idea of parading Melisa's head down the street, which did not go over well. He's trying to be Otto Hightower with his propaganda, and that did not work. And he sees that it did not work. So I don't want them to make me like this guy. I'm afraid that they're going to try, but he, as of right now, is still the worst. Um, and then for Allison got even worse too. She's like, I did not give you whatever to use my name. I'm like, come on, bro. Are you serious?
Yeah, Allison, I think even more interestingly enough, being on the why can't I be on the throne? That is so it's so poetic and it's so funny to me because they're talking about who's gonna rule and who's gonna be the king slash queen regent, and she's all of a sudden surprised that the group of men that staged this coup because they didn't want a woman on the throne don't want to empower a woman.
Well, let's be clear. I mean, the misogyny that was on display in that room was palpable and terrible. But you're right. Like, why does she expect to be treated any other way than how she was treated after their entire war is based on the fact that they don't want a woman to ascend to the Iron Throne. So no, Allison, you shouldn't be surprised that you're surrounded by pig-headed misogynists, including your children. One who she seems to be terrified of because do you get that vibe from her? Like she keeps on
100%.
referring to Aemond as like a thing, like
Yeah.
a monster.
She was also talking when she was talking to Rhaenyra. She said something along the lines of, "Well, do you know what Aemond is?"
Yes, what Aemond is. It's something. Yeah,
God, she's the worst. It's great.
she and Sir Chrissy Cole, they uh they deserve each other. Um Aegon, that's so gross. Everything
He
about Aegon is so disgusting.
he looks just like his dad, doesn't he?
He sure does. Except it took Viserys like 60 years to get to that point. He was fine 2 days ago.
He got what he wanted, though. This is what he was
True.
looking for. He was looking for the glory and the respect, and he got it.
I didn't even realize that he flew into that battle drunk. Like I had to rewatch it again.
Is that surprising at all?
Not a bit, not even a little bit, but I didn't realize like when he was sitting there talking to Allison in episode 4, he was at the table and she left after telling him to do nothing. Now he literally can't do anything. But he was drinking. Like he was just and he finished whatever was in there. And then you even see him as he's flying into battle like he's hanging halfway off the dragon. The guy is drunk. He's so dumb. He got what he deserved too. But boy, the the thing that they always do, like after, like the little episode featurette afterwards, I always find so interesting. And one of the people discussed his armor, because that's Valerian steel. It could not melt. So like if you were wearing regular armor, that fire would have probably melted that armor off of him. But the Valerian steel just heated up to the point where it like fused with his skin. And I'm sorry, but that was as gross as like the dragon scale scene in Game of Thrones. That
Yeah,
was nasty.
that's hard on the eyes.
I did laugh like when I saw they were. To me, it looked like some like nopales. You know, they had those green things like
Yeah.
it looked like cactus, and
Hmm.
I'm just like, oh, those dudes must be from Dorne. Like that's like a Dornish
Hmm.
remedy right there. I love that.
They're
That's
getting
great.
they're getting the herbs out, not just the CVS medication.
No, and then the Maester is just like telling Allison, "I'm trying to do everything I can. You're not helping." Um, All right. Well, is there anything we didn't get to in this episode? Like you said, there was a lot of pieces moving into other pieces, and some compelling things. 3 episodes left to go. Were there any final thoughts that you had before we finish off?
One, why does everybody in this show have mommy issues? Because
Was it the
Damon,
egg? Aegon said, "Mummy."
Aegon with the mummy, Damon with his dream with his mom, and then the episode before that, Aemond being in fetal position with a
Oh
elder
yeah, yeah, that
statesman.
lady. Yeah, I don't know her name.
Yeah, interesting. Second thing and the last thing, I don't think the witch woman is real.
Oh, interesting. You think that only Damon is seeing her?
Yes, I believe that
I've heard
because
this being discussed.
nobody else has acknowledged her. Even
It's
when they
true.
were speaking in the hallway, the guy, I don't know his name, the guy who's in charge of Harrenhal right now,
Sir
um,
Simon Strong.
Sir Simon Strong. I I remember him looking towards where she was walking, but sort of making like a strange face as if he didn't see her and was wondering who Damon was talking to. And
Yeah,
also, when she's walking by him, she disappears from the frame as soon as she goes behind him. You don't
yeah,
see her keep walking past him.
yeah. Like, did she just disappear out of thin
Yeah,
air, out of his vision, or yeah,
exactly.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I got that.
I don't think she's real.
Well, she did say she was a cursed barn owl, so maybe she is. Maybe there's an owl flying around in that room when and only Damon sees her. I don't know. All right, that's fantastic. Well, that was a pretty impromptu episode here, and you never fail to come through. Um, the Acolyte is over, so we're going back to just single subject episodes here for the next few weeks. Although Deadpool and Wolverine is coming out pretty soon, so we're gonna have to figure out when we're gonna see that, because I definitely want to see it. I could talk another hour about that one, but we won't. Anyway, so we'll get to that when we do. But for now, we will leave you all with our thanks for listening. And really, from my heart to yours, for Luke, this is Colby reminding you that we appreciate you listening, that we thank you for everything you do for our show. And just remember, you matter. You can find the Colbycast on Twitter and Instagram at the Colbycast. If you're wordy, like me, you can send an email to thecolbycast@gmail.com. Please subscribe to the show and leave a review on your favorite podcast app or wherever you listen to podcasts. This podcast is not endorsed by anyone or anything for that matter. It is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of the Colbycast unless otherwise indicated.
That'll do, Donkey. That'll do.